Good morning. I woke up early today and I figured out that my other microphone wasn't working at all. Only this one works. So I'll be using this one for the foreseeable future. So, what I want to discuss this morning is a topic that is very difficult to explain properly. And it has to do with Earth's history of politics. And so even though I'm in this country, it kind of doesn't matter in terms of politics because a lot of countries on Earth are in a similar situation in that they're run by the elite. So whoever the elite are in a specific country, whether it's India, China, Russia, France, Canada, America, Brazil. The elite, the oligarchs, the wealthiest billionaires, they've found ways to infiltrate the governments and control the laws that get passed in the country. This all started back, well, it's been going on a long time, but if you think about the evolution of money, you've got huge sums of money being amassed with kings and queens and princes and princesses and dictators throughout the 19th century and then into the 20th century. And then what happened was companies started forming. And once companies started forming, there were ways to, like, if you have a lot of employees, if you get a lot of people working for you, what you can do is you can generate large amounts of money quickly, and then you can reinvest that money in things like stocks and mostly stocks. And so, well, the other way they do it is, like, for example, in a country like Russia, where the stock market isn't the same as other, like, other countries, the wealth gets distributed among the corporations. So there would be 1 or 5 billionaires running the oil business, and there would be 1 or 5 billionaires running the agriculture business. This is in Russia, I'm saying. And so that wealth gets distributed among people that are associated with those billionaires, or we call it, sometimes they're called oligarchs. And so anyway, back to the political sphere. Because these corporations evolved over the 20th century and into the 21st century, what happened was they started to become very influential with choosing politicians or funding politicians by creating marketing campaigns and basically moving money to people that they support being politicians and being leaders in these different countries. And what happened in America was very interesting because unlike, for example, England, that has a royal family that has some form of control over the money supply or like funding different elite groups and backing different politicians. What happened in America was very unique because what they ended up doing was they passed some laws or a law that made it legal to what they did is they gave the rights of a corporation gave the rights of a person to a corporation, to all corporations. And so then what started to happen is corporations could sue anyone. So once a corporation can act like a person and sue someone, then all this other stuff started happening in America, like you could sue someone if they said something bad about you. That's called defamation. You could sue someone for all kinds of reasons. And so these corporations, over the decades after this law was introduced, they really started to affect the political process because they were able to not only support the politicians that thought the way they did, supported their business, and were going to pass laws that helped their business to succeed, but they also were able to challenge in court anyone that did or said anything bad against them. A good example of this is the drug companies. So what the drug companies did is while they were inventing all these drugs along the way throughout the 20th century, they were also making sure that no one was saying anything bad about the drugs. They were ensuring that doctors could sell the drugs as if those drugs were helping people when sometimes the doctors may not have really known that those drugs were good or bad. They're just being essentially paid to recommend the drugs. And anyone that would come out in and say a bad thing about any of these drugs get sued. You get challenged in court. So it went like this for quite a long time. And then recently what's happened is these elites, these billionaires, the money, a lot of it came through like different countries. For example, South Africa, I know, because of all the mining there and some of the families that were in control of the corporations in South Africa and then moved that money all over the world. Some of these ideas that these families and these business people have been trying to spread have made it into like countries like Canada or America. And the way they operate now is that there's what we call new media. And new media is kind of like because anyone can produce it. You can produce it in your own studio, at your own house like this. You can communicate the ideas that these elites are in favor of. And you might not be aware that you're marketing for corporations. You're speaking on behalf of corporations. One example is at the international political level, there's this debate going on, which is, do countries help each other? Should one country come to the aid of another country if, for example, they get invaded, like in the case of Palestine or Ukraine? So there's conflict there, and then the other countries of the world are asking themselves, the leaders of these other countries are asking themselves, what do we do about this? And it's interesting because the elites, the billionaires, the oligarchs, the extremely wealthy people on the planet, they kind of don't mind having wars. War for them is just something that happens, and it actually generates a lot of money. You can make weapons, resources get like stolen through war, and corporations can increase their profits sometimes by being involved in these conflicts, or even being like going into the country after the conflict because the resources are sort of like fair game. So that's what's going on in terms of the international political scene when there's conflict. The other thing that's happening with the international relationships are things like people are trying to decide how to address climate change or pollution, and whether, as an international community, we do something collectively to prevent any warming that's happening. Another thing that the international community is doing, or trying to decide what to do, is poverty and whether or not to take in refugees from other countries that are impoverished or in a conflict. So the international community is sort of recommending to each other, hey guys, it's kind of in our best interest as a species, as a human species, anyone living on Earth, to take in refugees and help countries that are poor, more poor, living in poverty. Maybe some countries don't have democracies, they don't vote. And so the governments are taking a lot of that money that is being generated from their resources, and they're not distributing it back to the citizens in the form of taxation. They just keep the money. And so the wealthier countries kind of have to ask themselves, or the democracies, I should say, do we stand up for these impoverished countries or these countries without democracies that might have dictatorships or fascism or just corrupt government systems without voting, without democratic processes? And it's a difficult thing because each country is faced with the challenge of, well, do we protect our own people, our own citizens, and build more roads for them and more hospitals or more schools for them? Or do we look out for the planet and try to reduce pollution? Do we help these countries that aren't in functional democracies? And so at the end of the day, it's a hard question for every government to answer. And so a lot of elections in Canada, America, England, France, like pretty much everywhere where they have functional governments, they're asking themselves, or we're asking ourselves, this question of, who do I vote for so that not only do my neighbors, people that live around me in this country, are protected and get the services they need from their government, like roads and like water and like schools. Not only that, but how much of the budget that these elected officials that I'm voting for should I be recommending to them, or should I be pushing them to spend on foreign relations with foreign countries, with other countries, countries that may need help, whether they're being attacked or whatever's happening to them? And if it was up to the corporations would say, don't give any of it away. Keep it all right here in our local area and fuck the rest of them. They can take care of themselves. And that doesn't sit well with me. I don't feel good about listening to a corporation saying that to my government officials, and I don't like when new media influences my government officials by acting like all the people around here want that. All the people around here don't want that. All the people around here want the government to provide services for us that we need, and some of the money that I pay in taxes needs to go to ensuring that planet Earth, the international community, is safe enough. As safe as we can make it. Obviously, we're not going to go into North Korea and get rid of that guy. We're not doing that. But we can ask the Chinese government to pollute less, that's something we're allowed to ask them to do. And the Chinese government knows that there's only one planet, we all breathe the same air, and they have oceans that could potentially rise if the planet gets too warm. So the Chinese government isn't stupid. They understand that it's in everyone on Earth's best interest, all Earthlings. It's in the best interest of everyone to act maturely, logically, rationally, and try to come to the aid of other countries when possible. So that's where we're at in 2025 here. The month is March. And like I said, this is a difficult concept to understand because what ends up happening is you get so focused on your own country that you just want to elect a very good leader of your country, or leaders, a group of leaders. And so you end up choosing a party. So in Canada here, we have the Conservative Party or the Liberal Party. You got to pick one. Or you could vote for the NDP, which is our Socialist Party. Or you could vote Libertarian, like me. There's not a lot of libertarians in Canada here, but a libertarian is essentially someone that doesn't want a very big government, only essential services, and believes in free speech, free gun ownership, free drug use, do all the drugs you want, and it's like a live and let live type of philosophy. I don't always agree with libertarian values. Like, for example, isolationism is when a country isolates itself from other countries, which includes not meddling in other people's conflicts. So that's a good thing. Don't get involved in other people's wars. But the problem with that is some wars need to be fought, like World War II. That was a war that America ended up joining, even though it was under a very isolationist government at the time. Everyone in America wanted, a lot of people in America wanted America to stay out of the war. But eventually it seemed obvious that there was no choice but for the Americans to resist the Nazi Party trying to take over all of Europe. And thankfully, the Russians also fought against Adolf Hitler in that war. And so Russia did the same thing as America, which is don't isolate, don't just defend, don't sit in your region and protect, but fight on behalf of others that need help. So that was World War II, and that was a big one. World War II ended with the use of nuclear weapons, which really changed the political environment because after that, conflicts weren't fought the same way. You didn't have armies moving around as much as you had like the different regions of Earth started to become defended militarily by, for example, America is sort of defending the western half, Russia is sort of defending the eastern half, and now that there's other countries with nukes, the landscape has changed. And so with this latest conflict in Ukraine, it's interesting because Vladimir Putin, he threatened using a nuke, but it seems kind of obvious that if he actually wants the region, if he wants to take over the region of Ukraine, it doesn't make any sense to obliterate it with a bomb that big. So that's been interesting to see a new conflict like that, even though, or a conflict like that in a situation where there's not really a nuclear weapon involved. It's not an actual threat at the moment. So the NATO countries, which are most of Europe, Australia, Canada, America, they're kind of trying to decide what to do about Ukraine because Ukraine's not a part of NATO, but NATO really doesn't want Russia to be invading other countries. That's not something that's really tolerated in today's political environment. Invading other countries has, for the most part, stopped happening after decades and decades of the borders of countries being drawn and defended. So that's what I wanted to try to explain to my viewers. And it's an unfortunate situation we have with the money systems on this planet being very enmeshed with the political systems. Ideally, they should be separate. The people of each country should vote in a political party. That party should make all the laws for the country, and the corporations and the billionaires and the bankers should not be involved in the political systems. But that isn't what we've got. That's not the situation that we have on Earth. So I just want everyone to be aware of that, because I think it will help when it comes time for you to vote for a candidate in your local elections. You should keep that in mind and try to listen to what they're saying about the way they think laws should be passed, the way they think democracies should be run, and do whatever you can to vote in someone that has an understanding of this problem between the wealthier side of society and the more common, average wealth side of the country, of the society. Because the majority of the people are on the average income side. Most of the people in your country are teachers, nurses, construction workers, managers, small business owners. So it's not in your best interest to support these global, some people call them globalist or elitist financiers, like people that have a huge amount of money or a huge corporation or are an oligarch in Russia. These people don't care about you as an average citizen of their country. So why vote them in? Why would you support them if you have a choice? So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. And thank you for listening. And I hope you have a great St. Patrick's Day. Go Irish.